We're live. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm Frank Wander, the CEO and founder of People Productive, and I'm here with my amazing co host, Terry Mays, who is a certified culture engineer. I hope you've been enjoying this series that we're doing on conflict. The first episode certainly was very well received. In that episode, we really talked about how to avoid or resolve it. And we said this is a three-part series. And today, we're actually going to be talking about productive conflict, why your organization needs it. You want to build an innovative organization, you need disagreement. You need people who have different thinking styles and points of view and come together in a way that they can actually have productive discussion. Productive disagreement over things, which can result in a much better outcome for the organization. And organizations need productive conflict. And there's actually a definition for this, and it's right here. An open exchange of conflicting or differing ideas in which parties feel equally heard, respected, and unafraid to voice dissenting opinions to reach a mutual resolution. There is a site online that happens to have definitions. I found this one. I think this is pretty good. I had to edit it slightly to fit it in here, but this is what it is. You know, that people are really, think about this, right? They come with conflicting or differing ideas, but the parties feel equally heard. So people are good listeners. They're unafraid to voice dissenting opinions because they have a culture that's productive. We are people productive. You want to build a productive culture. So you do want psychological safety. You can't make fun of other people's ideas. You got to encourage them to speak. You got to thank them for their input. Leaders have to really govern these conversations in a very productive way. And it actually really matters that, people feel comfortable speaking up. And so this is
Yes.
a really important, this is a really, really important topic. And every organization needs to be better at this, Tara. I've never seen a place that was perfect at it personally.
Yeah. The thing that I think people focus in on the conflict as a negative thing, but nobody ever really looks at conflict from the positive perspective of the things that you get out of conflict. If you set some ground rules and go into conflict with the right approach, you can actually learn some new things and innovate some new things, come up with new ideas that you never would have come up with on your own with just one train of thought. You need multiple ideas that you can bounce around off of each other and not take everything so personally, but to be able to express how you feel, express what you're thinking. And then most of the time, people are coming at the same problem from a different perspective. And when you lean into that, instead of being offended that the person doesn't agree with you, lean into what they're saying
Yep.
because they're bringing a different angle on the same problem. They're looking at it from a different perspective, and that always can give you additional information if you lean into it. But if you get offended and you kind of put the wall up and take a step back, you miss out on what conflict really could do. And you really do have to be pretty mature to lean into conflict because our natural brain response is to flee that situation or to fight for our rights. So
Yeah.
we're fighting for our perspective only. We don't want to see it from a different perspective. But if you can train your brain to stay calm in those
Mhm.
situations and actually listen to what the other person is saying and see, are there things that I can take away from what they're saying to help improve my idea? Or maybe my idea really is a bad one and I have
Yeah,
to accept that, you know? But being able
absolutely.
to listen and
That's
be
okay.
to other people, it's okay. It's
Ideas aren't bad. They're just ideas, and some ideas do, in fact, are more valid than others given the situation, the circumstances. But ideas have value. Companies should collect ideas. That whole notion of idea collection and then valuing them and making sure that ideas aren't lost because ideas have tremendous value. And Jerry Hirschberg was built the first Nissan, the car company design studio in La Jolla, California. It was the first one outside of Japan. And he used a process called Creative Abrasion. It's a process whereby different thinking styles grate against one another until the best idea emerges. Harvard Business Review did an article on this way back. Uh, and this is valid. I mean, he came up with some beautiful car designs. And creative abrasion really does exist. And it's a process whereby different thinking styles come together and, kind of grade off one another. So I'll pull up a little screen here. I think this is very valuable where people can look at this and say, look, here's the DIS styles. And let's take a look at these different thinking styles and talk about how these come together. Because, you have a lot of leaders actually are DIs, they're dominant,
Mhm.
but they're also kind of intuitive and influential. And they can actually, if that personality type starts to dominate a meeting, you lose out on a lot of other perspectives. You want to give all of these perspectives a chance to be heard at the meeting. And so you can see for each of these, there is a destructive and a productive tendency. This is actually Wiley's. You can get this online. It's a PDF by Wiley on, these disconflict types. And so you could download this. This is very valuable. It shows you why creative abrasion exists. And you can see where people easily get steamrolled or can come together. The C's tend to really want to look at a lot of things in a lot of detail. They need the facts, they need data, they need it to sort out the issues. But, people who are intuitive and don't have the facts may draw a very bad conclusion. There may be validity to it, but in the circumstances, you got to go with what the data says sometimes, right? Because the data may be the opposite. So I think, Tara, I think this is really sums it up right here. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think so too. You want to be careful if you're that dominant type leader that you don't overpower the people in your organization or make them feel like they cannot bring their ideas because you're just going to stomp all over it. You're not going to listen. You're not going to be open to change.
Mhm.
Be careful that you're not that kind of dominating leader because you end up with really low quality items because you're only seeing one perspective. Again, if you look at this picture, it's even a pie. If you look
Yeah,
at each person bringing something to the table, they're bringing a different perspective, and it helps you see the whole picture in a different way than you would have been able to see it if you just had one angle.
right. All those pieces, all those points of views with people looking at different aspects of a problem and actually bringing different thinking and communication styles to the meeting as well.
Yes.
The influencers, communicates empathy. They want open dialogue. They want everybody participating. The D's want to share their opinion fast. They want to get it out there. The C's want time to really think about it and analyze the information. And, these are productive things. The D's can get the conversation going. They could draw in the C's and do a lot of follow-ups on what they're saying, which is a very, very important skill. And so this is where creative abrasion comes from. You've got to
Yeah.
get these different thinking styles together. This diversity of ideas, diversity of thinking styles. It really does matter. And science is very clear. This is how you really start to unlock and tap into different uh, aspects of innovation. You can get very creative people and have them come together, but work together in a productive way,
Right.
you know? And
Exactly.
I say productive because, there is obviously that notion of companies that have a lot of meetings that are harmonious, but we know harmony without debate is apathy. And so you need this creative abrasion to really be good and to get to a good resolution on things.
Yeah. You need to challenge the idea, right? So you may have a great idea, but if it's not challenged, you don't really look at it from a different perspective. You never really know if it's the best idea. You can always have a really good idea that can be improved upon by just challenging that idea, looking at it from a different perspective, seeing what others have to think about it. There's always value in getting others' opinions. Sometimes those opinions are not relevant and you don't use those opinions, and that's okay. But more times than not, you should always seek out the advice of others just to include people, especially when you're working on a team. You don't want to be the only voice that's heard. You want to make
Yeah.
sure that you're being more inclusive. And that is more my nature. I tend to be more IS. So I
Mhm.
want everybody's opinions and feelings to be, I want
Yeah,
everybody to be happy and I want everybody to get along well. And I'm very optimistic about approach when I take on to different tasks. So I'm usually that person that's trying to bring it all together.
yeah.
And I tend to go IS, so I'm more
Very valuable in a meeting where people have to come
flexible. Yeah,
together and you draw
yeah,
them out. You help bring them out and you wanna be inclusive and make sure other people's ideas are heard. So that's part of the process. You need that influence at
yes.
the meeting. If it's all Ds, you've got a disaster on your hands. You really do.
Yes, it's gonna be a fight to the finish
Yeah,
because the D is trying to win. That person is
yeah,
trying to get their idea out, and they feel like they have not
yeah,
won unless everybody else surrenders. And so you really have to be careful with that D personality as well as the S personality because that person can be so compromising
yeah.
that they just let people walk all over them. They never get an idea out because they constantly let people just take over. So you have to keep that in
Draw them
balance.
out.
Yeah, you really do have to keep the personalities in balance, and it is like being a circus ringleader. You gotta
Yeah.
you gotta keep everything going and in balance, but if you can find as a leader, find a way to have those personality types work together as opposed to seeing each other as the enemy and why are they always against me, but see that that person is gonna bring in a different perspective. It's not a I win, you lose. We're always looking for ways that we win because, again, if you're on a team, it's so important to remember this that if one aspect of the application fails, if you're, I'm in software development all the time. So if
Mhm.
something fails, the whole team fails.
You bet.
Nobody ever comes back to say that it was this particular person. It was an IT failure. Whenever there's, and I'm in IT, so I always use IT
Yeah,
examples. But if there was a failure, they're going to say it was an IT failure. They're not going to go in and start pulling back the teams and say, oh, it was this team's fault.
yeah.
Eventually you're going to get to root cause. But when it's all said and done, when people start talking about that problem, they're going to say that it was the whole group's problem. So you really do have to see it that way that these different personality types are there to help see different perspectives, see how we can look at this problem in a way that maybe we haven't considered some things. Maybe there are some things that we just didn't know. And so having those different perspectives helps us come up with a better product. It really does.
Oh, it does. Listen, you've got to have an environment where there's healthy communication. Productive conflict is all about people coming together and debating things in a very, very healthy way. That's what actually increases productivity. And you need a culture where people are non-judgmental. That's why you don't want to say, "Oh, that's a bad idea," right? That's a good idea. Oh, this is a much better idea. Look, people have ideas, they're contributing thoughts and ideas, and you got to be non-judgmental, right? Because you're trying to draw people out and you want to get to the point where people realize that this type of debate and conflict is a part of healthy business. This is how you drive innovation. So they should welcome it. They shouldn't
Yes,
be afraid, in organizations where the D's dominate and, start judging everybody's ideas and trying to win, that's when it becomes very, very unhealthy. And you've got to avoid that because that is destructive ultimately.
that's right. You don't want there to be a I win, you lose philosophy on the team. Once people start seeing that, they're going to retreat. They're not going to go ahead and share their ideas and be open.
Yeah.
They're going to start retreating and just kind of go with the flow. And that's not what you want. You really want a team that feels like they can share their authentic ideas, bring their whole self to work, and really share and come up with some really great suggestions that you can incorporate. And so that's the other piece of this. You
Yeah.
don't want to leave people in that space where you make them feel like none of my ideas are ever taken because that creates a whole different situation. But
Yeah.
you absolutely want to make sure that every person feels like their voice is heard. And that's really what this is all about. How can we use this conflicting way of looking at the same problem? How can we use that so that everybody's voice is heard and we're able to produce something greater than we would have been able to produce as an individual?
Yeah. I mean, how to reward people without money. I mean, we did
Mhm.
7 episodes on how to reward people without money, and influence is certainly one of them. And you want people to have influence in situations like this. You want to draw them out. Maybe they do have an incredible perspective on something that you're working on. And that's why this matters. And it is really, really just so important. You want to actually bring out this creative abrasion
Yes.
where these different ideas and thinking styles start to grate on one another. And that is an environment that's non-judgmental, where there's a large degree of psychological safety, where people are included and accepted, their ideas are, given a chance to be talked about, and they're able to contribute just like everybody else, especially the S's who may shy away from wanting to contribute at the meeting, especially if, people are speaking up loudly and boldly, and, they may shy away from a confrontation. So really important. This is an incredibly, incredibly important topic. And I think you've got to look at the fact that there is productive conflict in an organization, and companies need it. They need more of it. They can't innovate. They have to have this, Tara. They've got to
Yes.
figure this out. And that's what happens with culture. They've got to understand what normative behaviors to create in the culture in order to tap the innovative potential of their talent. They just have to. I mean, there's just
Yes.
no question about it at this point.
No question about it.
So I think, if you miss any episodes, you can always visit us uh, on at People Productive page on LinkedIn, but you can also go to peopleproductive.com. You can find all of our stuff there, links to different things. You could subscribe to the People Productive channel on YouTube, and you can certainly join us Wednesdays at 3 o'clock when we're covering a different topic each week. So next week, we're going to be going into relationship repair. I hope you're going to be available to join us. Relationship repair is about actually investing time and energy into relationships that are important, that are worth repairing. Not every set of relationships are worth repairing. Some of them take energy to repair, but it's worth it, because in organizations where people don't know how to have productive conflict, relationships can unfortunately get damaged. And that's why the third episode in this series on repairing relationships that matter. So we're here every Wednesday at 3. I hope you could join us next week for that episode. I hope you've enjoyed episode 2 on conflict, because conflict matters and conflict isn't always a bad thing. Let's just agree on that today. So
Yes.
listen, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it and hope to see you next week.
Yes. Bye for now.